I don't know why, I've always wanted to go to Africa when I was a kid.
And I was having a perfectly fine life in the United States, but I was yearning to get out of this culture.
In 1992,
62.
Excuse me, 62. I'm older than that. In 1962, I graduated from college, and fortunately, the Peace Corps had just begun. And I applied to the Peace Corps and was accepted to go to Liberia, West Africa. I was assigned to a village, Baye, which was near the Guinea border, pretty remote village, with approximately 200 huts and over 1,000 people in the village. And it was up on a hill surrounded by jungle. And I was assigned with another Peace Corps volunteer, George Radcliffe. We were to teach in the elementary school there. Our house was right next to the schoolhouse, and it was approximately a quarter of a mile from the village itself. Because we were living near the schoolhouse, the kids loved to hang around and watch us do our daily things. Just the ordinary things like reading, writing, eating, cooking. They found most of what we did fascinating, and I suspect hilarious. We were very entertaining. So one of the things I learned when I was there, which I hadn't done before, was to bake. I baked some bread from using a recipe from the Fanny Farmer cookbook in the Peace Corps book locker in a tin oven on top of a kerosene stove.
Well, I was living in Colorado Springs, and I just finished being engaged, and I was pretty not happy about that, and I was finished with it all. And my parents said to me, "Why are you always looking for somebody who's so serious and passionate? Why don't you just marry somebody who's a lot of fun and likes to dance all the time like we do?" I was finished with that, and so I wanted to have an adventure. They thought it would be a good idea to get me gone, and that maybe I could contribute something, so I took off for Africa.
After a year of being in this village and teaching school and doing a number of other projects in the village, George and I got word from the Peace Corps that they were going to send 2 new Peace Corps volunteers to help us teach in the school, and that they were having a training program in the United States for all the volunteers that were coming to Liberia. During the training program, one of the 2 women who were identified as those coming to Baye Public School dropped out. That meant only one volunteer, a woman, would be sent to us. I just happened to have an advance copy of a kind of like a high school annual. It was a photo album, and it had all the photos of the new people coming to Liberia and a little bio thing underneath them. I spent hours thumbing through this thing, essentially looking for the one that I wanted the Peace Corps to send to me. So on the weekend that was designated for our mail to be delivered to us, and our, hopefully, female to be delivered to us, a friend of ours, Clyde Titus, who drove the Jeeps and dropped all the new Peace Corps volunteers off, delivered the mail, was expected on a Friday night, and it rained all day Friday night, no Jeep. This was not that unusual in West Africa, by the way. It rained all day Saturday, all night Saturday night, no Jeep. No male, no female. All day Sunday, rained. About 9 o'clock Sunday night, and mind you, this is pretty isolated with jungle all around, really dark, and it was pretty noisy with the rain on the zinc roof of this little cement house we lived in, and we could hear because we're always listening for the Jeep. In the distance, there was distinctly Jeep sound, and it was only coming for us. We knew that. So,
So here's the part, no, you gotta tell the story about the finding the photo.
not yet.
Not yet, okay. All right, so my part of Clyde was that he had collected me in the Jeep and said, we're gonna take all day to drive way up to this village. So the roads there are very narrow, and they're all full of wet red clay that splashes into the side of the open Jeep. And we had to go and deliver mail to all these Peace Corps volunteers who never got mail except every once a couple of months. So when we stopped at a couple of the houses, every time he came out, he had food. And this food was, first one was chocolate or banana cream pie. The second one was banana bread. And with both of these gifts of food was a message from the volunteer that said, you know, this food was made for the new volunteer from Bob McAndrews. I thought, wonder about that. So we kept going. It was really dark at night, and the insects were chirping, and it was wet. We could smell the jungle, and we couldn't see anything because it was so dark. And then Clyde said, okay, we're going to go over the hill here, and you look for a house in the distance. So sure enough, pretty soon I saw a flickering of a kerosene lantern in the window of the house. As soon as Clyde saw that, he said, I'm going to see George and Bob. He whizzed the Jeep down the hill, screeched to a halt in front of the house, and then he jumped out of the Jeep and he said to me, stay here in the rain.
So Clyde, who was a friend of ours, had this photo album in his hand. Unbeknownst to him, I had been poring through this thing with my advance copy. But he had this big grin on his face. And he comes into the living room, and George and I were sitting at our little card table, and he takes this album and he flops it on the card table, and he says, pick the one you want. Without any hesitation, I just flipped it over to the right page and pointed at her, Suellen. He was dumbfounded. He could not believe that without a hesitation, I had picked the person, the woman, the female that he had in the truck to deliver to us.
Yay. So Clyde's surprise was spoiled, but my surprise was just beginning. So we did indeed start teaching school on Monday, and I loved teaching school there, and I also loved getting to know Bob. I particularly liked to watch him work with the kids. He had such a passion for teaching these children how to read. In fact, he'd started a library. And the library was made from the books from that same Peace Corps locker. So if you want to know where your taxes go to support the Peace Corps, it sends books to little kids. It's great. So in order to have them appreciate the books, he had a ritual that he made them all line up and wash their hands before they got to come in and touch the books. And I was very impressed with this. And then after school, we spent night after night after night having serious discussions about philosophy, about Nietzsche, and about existentialism and politics. And then we played our guitars. It was Joan Baez days, of course, in that time. And also, he played for me on the battery-operated record player, Opera. Just like Robert Redford in Out of Africa. But we were first. That was before the movie, and this was much, much better. So during that time, I got really sick one time, and we were very far from any kind of help or anything, and he spent a long time making cloths get cold in the water and coming and putting them on my forehead until the fever went away. And so I started thinking, well, maybe, okay, this is going along here, and it's a few months until New Year's Eve. So I'm not going to let him kiss me until New Year's Eve. I thought, well, maybe I don't want to wait that long, so I'll wait until Christmas, December. Well, I don't know if I want to wait that long, so how about Thanksgiving or our birthdays, which are both in the middle of November? But the problem with it is that he never even tried.
After 3 weeks of rather intense courtship, Suellen and I were walking in the rain. It rained a lot. And we went under a tree. We were walking on a jungle path to another village. And we went under a tree to get away from the rain, and we had one umbrella. And so I held the umbrella up over, and we were this close. And I thought, this is my opportunity to kiss her, which I did. And then I said, well, to myself, now I've been to first base. So I said, I guess we should get married. And then I kissed her again.
So then it was time to tell my parents.
Things are moving along rather quickly here.
So Bob wrote a letter to my father, and we've told you about the mail. It takes 4 months to get mail. And we took a couple of months to actually get that letter out and then back again. And the reply to the letter said something to the effect of, "It's about time," and yes, this is fine, and as a matter of fact, we're coming. Well, they were here in Colorado Springs. A lot of you knew my parents. My father was an attorney here. It was February. It was cold and snowing. And they're going to come to West Africa. They'd never been out of the country before. And I had 5 brothers and sisters who were younger and needed to be taken care of. Well, somehow they arranged that and made their way to Liberia, West Africa.
So we needed to get details. We wanted to get married in a traditional village wedding ceremony. We needed the details of how to carry that out. So we went into the village several times and talked to Chief Bigby. How is it that we can have a traditional ceremony in the village? Okay, so there were a number of details, but the most essential thing was that because this was a polygynous society, one man can have several wives. If they can afford them, it was also a bride price culture. You had to purchase your wife or wives. At the time, the going rate for a wife, a woman, was 1 cow. And at that time, the cow is worth approximately $200. Well, since I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I was earning 11 cents an hour. And I really couldn't come up with $200. So I agreed in my exchanges with Chief Bigby that I would pay $40 and a white chicken for my wife.
Ceremony.
As soon as Suellen's parents arrived, because they had to be part of this wedding ceremony, they came up into the village square, and I was seated on the floor, on the ground, on a mat on one side of the square, Suellen and her parents on the other side, because we were going to go through exchanges of me giving things to her side, to her family. There were 800 villagers surrounding us. There were dignitaries, foreign dignitaries who came. They wanted to see this ceremony. And so I began by giving gifts of clothing to her mother, much like this lapa and a buba. And I gave a wonderful chief's gown to her father. And then I gave them some cola nuts to chew, bitter cola nuts. And then finally, I gave the $40 and the white chicken, which was a sign of my pure intentions.
As soon as the presents had been given, we didn't say any vows, because the most important thing in a traditional ceremony like this, in a farming culture, was for Bob to compensate my poor father because he was taking his daughter away, who would no longer be able to work on the farm. So that was the idea of all of the presents. When that was all over, then we began to think, well, what comes next? At that moment, Chief Bigby got up, and he held his hands up in the air, and everybody got silent. And my father put the money into the pocket of his new gown, and they took the white chicken away for later. And Chief Bigby said, "Thank you very much for coming to our village for this traditional wedding. We're very honored that you've come all this way. But I have to tell you some wisdom about being married. I know that in the United States, that people just have a romance, they think they're in love, and they get married really fast, and sometimes it doesn't work. But here we do it a different way. We're going to do this the traditional way, so I think it will work. And that means that, first of all, the couple has to see each other's ways for a really long time. Well, Teacher Bob and Teacher Suellen have seen each other's ways.
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
And the second thing is, they have to treat each other as if they are the best of friends. So that means, like, let's say it's raining in the jungle, that it's nighttime and you're afraid of ghosts. And maybe there are other things in the jungle that you don't know. But you're thinking, your mind is not at ease because you're thinking about your friend in the hut in the middle of the jungle. And so you start to go there. And when your friend sees you coming, he says, "Why did you come here at this time of the night, in this dangerous time?" And you say, "Because I was just thinking about you and I wanted to make sure that you were okay. So come, sit down, let's eat." That's the way that marriage works.
So after listening to this wisdom, it was time to celebrate. Since I didn't have any relatives representing me there, 2 of the men in the village were my representatives. And one of them took an ancient shotgun, shot it in the air, and at the same time yelled out, "We have bought ourselves a wife."
And at that time, the drums started drumming. A lot of different complicated rhythms started getting added. The chicken stew was passed around to everybody. And people started dancing. We danced and danced. My parents danced. All the villagers danced. And Bob and I danced. And I thought to myself, well, I did it after all. I found somebody who was passionate and serious, and he could also dance. And we've been doing it for 50 years.